Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the webinar on communicating rates with the Georgia Water and Wastewater Dashboard. It is approximately 1 hour, and I'm Annalie Harkins, the Data Specialist and Project Manager at the Environmental Finance Center. And also with me is...
Hi, I'm Austin Thompson, and I'm a Project Director at the Environmental Finance Center.
All right, so let's see, it's about 11:01. I think most people are here already, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll do a few, sorry, just trying to figure out how to go to the next slide. Down here. Oh, okay. All right, so we just wanted to go over a few of the kind of admin things first to make sure that y'all are familiar with GoToWebinar and how to use it. If you want to ask a question, you can submit a question, type it in, and we will address that either at the end or, if it's appropriate during the slide that we're on. We are using the phone line, so, you all should be muted. But if there's anything in particular that you have a question about or you want to use your utility as an example, please, type that in the question box and we will be happy to address it. First of all, does anyone have any questions about any of the controls? Looks like we're good. Okay, so we'll just continue. As I said, I'm Annalie, and we also have Austin here. We both work at the Environmental Finance Center at UNC-Chapel Hill. And our center was founded 20 years ago, and our mission is really to help local governments provide environmental services in fair, effective, and financially sustainable ways. So we do that in several channels with applied research, training and outreach, program design and evaluation. And we also do a lot of tools as part of that, and the dashboard is one of those tools. And that's what I do. I do a lot of dashboards. And our partner in this project for the Georgia Water and Wastewater Rate Survey and the dashboard is GFA, who I'm sure you all are familiar with. And they, since 1985, have been facilitating programs to conserve and protect Georgia's energy, land, and water resources. And very importantly, they also provide loans for water and wastewater infrastructure. And we have been partnered with them since 2007. So this is the 11th consecutive year of the Georgia Water and Wastewater Rate Survey, which is great, to have all that historical data, see how things have changed over time, and to have that consistency. So we're really, really glad to still be working with GFA and continue that partnership going forward as we continue to try to serve the utilities of Georgia. Okay, so briefly, we're just going to go over what we'd like to touch on in this webinar. First, we're just going to do an overview of the survey, the 2018 survey results from this year. Then we'll go in depth into the features and the benefits of using the Georgia Water and Wastewater Rates Dashboard and how to compare one system's rates with another's. And also we're going to explore additional tools that can help communicate rates, because we really want to stress that the dashboard and our other related tools can be used to your advantage when you have to have a conversation about setting rates or, trying to grapple with that decision, which is sometimes very complicated, could be political, could be lots of concerns for various reasons in your community. So it's an important decision, and it's often a hard one. So it's important to have all the resources you can to help ensure your utility's financial sustainability. All right, so as I said, this is the 11th consecutive year of the rate survey. And so, hopefully you all are familiar. We've been contacting you for many years. And the basic way that the survey works is that we reach out to all of the rate charging surveys in Georgia. We collect the rate sheets, and then we put it into our database. And this year, we actually had the highest response rate ever at 97% of rate charging utilities. So that's Really awesome. Thank you all for participating and sending us your rate sheets. And if you weren't included in this year's survey and you still want to be part of the dashboard to be able to use its benefits, you can still submit your rates and we will add them. It may not be, tomorrow, but we will get to it sometime soon, and you can also be part of that. Okay, we also use additional data sources, and that's part of what really gives the dashboard its meaningful comparison groups and more rich information than just the bill amount. So we use demographic data from the United States Census Bureau, specifically the 2013 to 2017 5-year estimates from the American Community Survey. We use data from the U.S. Geological Survey about geographic data and watersheds. We get financial data from the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. This year we also got electricity rates data from the Georgia Public Service Commission. And of course, we get data from the EPA, especially the Safe Drinking Water Information System. So all of that goes into the dashboard along with the rates information that we collect. Okay, so as I said, 97% of utilities participated this year, and that is 517 out of 539, and that's serving around 8 million water customers. Most of them were municipalities, then we have authorities, some districts, a few for-profits, some consolidated governments, and one nonprofit. So as you can see, from this pie chart on the right, most of them were providing both services, water and sewer. And very few are providing just sewer only. And this, around 8 million water customers represents almost 100%, 99.8% of people served by community water systems in the state. So that's really significant. This is a very broad, inclusive survey. Oftentimes, people struggle with trying to have meaningful insights from a survey because only 30% of the population they're trying to get information from responds. But this really encompasses almost every utility in Georgia, so you can count on it. Okay, so we're going to start off going into the anatomy of the dashboard. Since the dashboard has been around for several years for Georgia, this may be something you already know, though maybe there are some features that you weren't aware of. And if you are new to using the dashboard, hopefully this will get you familiar with how to use its features. So starting at the top, we have we're using an example utility for most of these. This drop-down menu where you can type in your utility's name or just select from the list of utilities that are in the survey. And that's the first step, to select one. We only display one at a time. On the upper left here, you can select which service you're interested in, either water, sewer, or water and sewer. And there's this slider bar that goes from 0 all the way up to 15,000 gallons. So we have a default set on around 5,000 gallons based on kind of what we believe to be the average monthly customer use in Georgia, but you can play around with it, move it low, move it high to get what really matters to you. And at 0, of course, that's just the base charge, so that can be a great point of comparison to see where you're starting from. And because it is so variable, a utility might start off, with a base charge, and it looks like they are in maybe the top 10% of utilities. It looks like their rate is really high, but then when you get to a higher consumption point, it might be that then they're in the lowest 10% of utilities. So playing around with that consumption slider can really give you more information about how their rate structure works, how it affects different customer use patterns for low volume users versus high volume users. So I encourage you to, get away from just the default 5,000 gallons. Right underneath that, you see the monthly water bill for the selected service and the consumption point, which here we have $26.50. This is also displayed, over here in the bill comparison dial, which we'll get to. Underneath the slider, we have a map of the entire state, and all of these blue dots are the locations of all of the utilities in the survey. So if you know exactly where you are in the state, you can, try to pick out your blue dot. But, there's other ways to get there more accurately. It also lists at the bottom the total number of rate structures. So since this is on water, it's comparing 539 water rate structures, and this number will change based on the service that you've selected and also the comparison group that you've selected. Right now it's all utilities. Next, on the right-hand side, this is where the dials are. This is where you can get some different views of what this monthly bill amount actually means. So this is, very important section. These top two dials compare you to your peer group. And like we said, here it's selected as all utilities in the survey, which is the default, but we do have many comparison groups that we have thought about a lot in trying to give utilities a meaningful way, someone that is actually similar to them instead of just the next town over. Because as we know, each utility faces different circumstances, different obstacles, and there's so many variables that the bills can really vary so much. So these top two, comparing to your comparison group. And like I said, so the comparison groups that we've come up with are a lot of different things you can look at. One that we really recommend is size. So looking at utilities that serve a similar number of customers. Utility size is, I would say, probably the biggest factor in how utilities operate and how they are able to spread out their costs over the population that they serve. So if you're a small utility, compare yourself to other small utilities. Don't try to compare yourself to someone that's serving 100,000 customers, because they can definitely leverage out those costs a lot more efficiently than you can. So that's an important consideration, size of the comparison group. You can also look at the type of rate structure. For example, if you're using a uniform rate, it's just $5 per 1,000 gallons. You can compare yourself against others that are using that type of rate structure and see where you fall in that rate amount. You can do by location in several ways. And so you can search by watershed. You can also do mileage, so within 25 miles, 50 miles, or 100 miles. We also have demographics, so that's pulling that census data. You can look at utilities that are serving customers of a similar median household income. So we're looking at the same sort of makeup of the community that you're serving, whether maybe they're not as well off or they're super wealthy. It's helpful to have that kind of information as well as we get into the affordability concerns that could come up. Also type, and this includes water source type. And so, groundwater versus surface water versus purchased water, all of those have different pricing concerns that come into them. And financials. So maybe you want to see what are other utilities that are kind of in the range that we are making. How are they doing? How are they, how well off are they? Are they in a similar situation? Kind of just seeing where you fall within all those groups. So, like I said, this first style here, bill comparison, is the go-to. It's, I would say, probably the first one that you're going to look at, because it gives you that great information of the bill price and where you fall within your peer group. So let's dive into what that means. By the peer group that you selected, what I mean is this dark median, this dark green band in the middle of the dial is showing what the median, so that middle 50% of utilities are charging for the same service and the same consumption point. And so here we have a water bill at 5,000 gallons. The median is $27, and this is $26.50. So, it's right within that group there. And this, is from 25% up to 75%. So it's not too high, it's not too low. This is the majority of what your peers are charging in here. So it's a great place to be, the median. Next, we have these light green bands that are to the left, the left and the right of the middle dark green band. And this is for bills that are a little bit lower and a little bit higher than what the median is. So, not quite in what everybody else is doing, maybe something to consider, maybe they need to raise their bills a little bit, maybe they have some affordability concerns over here. But that's what the light green bands mean. And so if you have both of these green sections combined, that is 80% of utilities. So that's like a really good, kind of sample size to give you an idea of, we have, $20 over here, up to $40 over here. Most of the bills are falling within that $20 to $40 range for 5,000 gallons of water. Lastly, we have these little yellow sections at the very bottom, left and right, and these are the lowest and highest 10% of utilities in that group. So they're charging significantly less or significantly more than most other utilities. And we also have here listed the minimum bill, which in this case is $6.50, and the maximum bill, which is $75. So the yellow group is a little concerning to be in. It does, make you think, oh, well, what's going on there? It doesn't mean automatically that a utility is just gouging their customers. It just means, like, you want to look into the factors behind that and why that may be the case. Moving on to the next style, we have the conservation signal. What this means is that we're looking at how strong of a pricing signal are you sending to your customers in order to encourage conservation, if that's a priority for you. So we have it divided into these quartiles, 25, 50, 75, and up to 100 over here. And again, this is based on your comparison group. So depending on what you've selected, maybe it's, in your watershed, in your geographic area, whatever it may be, it's limiting you to that pool of utilities. And so in this example here, we have 350. This means that after 10,000 gallons, the price of 1,000 gallons, so from 10,001 to 11,000 gallons basically, is $3.50. And we would say that's a fairly weak conservation signal. It's not in the lowest 25%, but it's not something that a customer would necessarily say, ouch, like I don't want to use extra water because it's going to cost too much. It'll hurt my wallet. So, and again, we have the min and the max over here. When it says min is 0, that just means someone is charging a flat fee, and so they're not charging volumetrically. So don't really believe that it's 0. Okay, so yes, conservation signal, we got the 4 quartiles. This bottom section of the dashboard here, it's not comparing you to your peers anymore. It's comparing just your utilities information to established benchmarks. So we're going to start with the one on the left, cost recovery. This is a really important one. I'm going to just go back for a second. If you look, bill comparison is right above cost recovery. That is for a reason. They are inherently linked. So what you see on here is absolutely affecting what is down here. And so that's, why we display all of these together, is because there are a lot of different factors to consider what's going into your rate structure and how it's affecting your utility and your community in different ways. So cost recovery. We have from 0 to 1, this red band here means you are not bringing in enough revenue to meet your operating expenses, including depreciation. So obviously this is not a great position to be in. If you are not even able to meet those, you certainly can't save for future expenses or capital projects or emergencies that may come up. So we really want utilities to be at least 1, If you are in this red area, obviously you're facing some troubles, and hopefully, we can provide you with some resources to help you out. We do have free technical assistance for small utilities in particular that serve fewer than 10,000 people. So I'll mention that, how to request that later on. Okay, so red, not great. This yellow band is between 1 and 1.2. And this means, you're making enough to cover those operating expenses, including depreciation, but maybe not enough to actually save enough in the long term or plan enough for future projects. So it's kind of like you're living a little bit more than paycheck to paycheck, but obviously you're not going to be able to like buy a new car with what you have left over. And I just want to mention that we have including depreciation, well, for two reasons. One is that the data automatically includes depreciation, so we can't separate that out. But the other is that we always include depreciation when we can, because that is a significant factor in the long-term financial sustainability of a utility. If you are, maybe just over making ends meet and you're not able to factor in that your equipment is going to wear out, it is going to fail eventually, you're just kind of sticking your head in the sand and pretending that you're not going to come up with enormous expenses. As we know, water and wastewater utilities are extremely expensive to run, no matter what size you are. So it's really important to be able to kind of budget out that number over the lifespan of what that asset would be, so that when the time comes to replace it, you do have that money in mind. You have already accounted for that, and you're able to do that without, just everything falling apart. Okay, the green section, of course, which is the largest, we have from just above 1.2 and then all the way, almost to, what is it, like 2.75, 2.8, 2.8. So if you're in this green section, that means you are making enough to cover your costs, also to save for, rainy day fund, for emergencies, for capital projects. So this is, a good place to be. It means that you have the flexibility to prepare for the future. We also include this extra little yellow sliver here from 2.8 to 3, just to kind of, have a warning of, well, is it too good? That could either mean, if this is actually the case, that maybe there could be affordability concerns in your community, but also maybe there's something else that's going on there. Maybe your depreciation expenses are extremely low because all of your assets have already depreciated to 0, in which case you would look really great. But you're not actually accounting for those true expenses that you're going to need to replace. So if you're all the way over here, it's just something that you need to look into of, why is that the case? Because, it's a little suspicious. Okay, moving on to the median affordability dial in the lower right here. We have annual bills, and this again is for the selected service over here, so right now it's water, as a percent of MHI. And this is a gradient, unlike the other dials that go kind of the traffic scheme of green, yellow, red. We did this one in a more neutral color because it is it's hard to have set universal benchmarks for this, and that's also why we call it median affordability, because these percentages are based on the median household income for your community. But that's only, again, that's only the 50th percentile. So there's 50% that are making more than that median household income. There's also 50% that are making less. So on the left-hand side, we have these lighter shades, starting from 0 and 1 and going into a little bit darker all the way up to 6 over here. And in this example, 0.73, we would say, well, that seems pretty affordable based on the median household income. However, because this is a complicated issue, that doesn't tell the whole story. So let's say you're maybe over here on the kind of light side. If you click on this blue question mark to the right of the dial, and you can do this for all the dials, there's more information when you click on the blue question mark, it's going to give you what the annual bills would be for that consumption point and service that you selected, and also what the annual MHI is in that community. And then we have more of an explanation of why it is tricky to come up with, a set number or a set standard on what is or is not affordable, because obviously communities are made up of people from all kinds of backgrounds and all kinds of income levels. So we do have a link here to our residential rates affordability assessment tool, which I really encourage you to use if you are want to find out how your utility bills may be affecting people, especially on the lower income levels of your community. You know, poverty rate also goes into that. Maybe the annual MHI is, you know, looking pretty good, but you have a 35% poverty rate. That means, you know, a lot of your customers may be affected significantly by those bills. So something good to look into. It gives you a point of reference, but then it's not the end of the story. It's not the be all end all. If you want to look into affordability, again, consider using this tool. Think about the makeup of your community and you know, how all of that comes together. All right, so we've gone through the 4 dials on the rates comparison tab, which is the default first tab. The next tab is characteristics, and this has some statistics and just kind of text information laid out so that you can just see that how it is. So we have Athens Clarke County as an example here. An ownership type, that's again where we're differentiating between, is it a local government? So for example, is it a municipality? Is it a county or district? Is it a for-profit? So that's what we mean by ownership type. Here it's a consolidated government. Then we have the primary county that it's serving. If it's serving more than one county, again, we're sticking with primary, like where are the most of their customers located? Primary service area. And then the date that the rates became effective. And this gives you an indication that, you know, hopefully this is the most up-to-date data. Here we have July 1st, 2018. So, you know, this also gives you an indication. Let's say you're looking up a utility and you see that the rates haven't changed since 2011. Well, that's obviously going to affect things on the rates comparison tab because prices change, inflation happens, different expenses occur. So if you're using 2011 rates, you're probably not prepared for what's going on in 2018 or 2019. Also below that first table, we have these 3 radio buttons again, where you can select your service, water, sewer, or water and sewer, and you can select your comparison group again. So when you use this drop down, and you know, it's the same ones from the first tab with geographic and demographic and system characteristics. When you use that, it will filter this information so that it's just for that comparison group. So first it starts with the utility that you've selected, you know, the number of connections, the service population, revenues and expenses, also average household size, MHI, and poverty rate. And then you can compare what you have for this one utility against the median for your selected comparison group. Here it's all utilities. So if you want to see, well, how do these numbers compare to the other utilities in our region or of similar size or serving customers of similar income levels? So that's kind of a good way just to compare those two. And then statewide stats over here, we just have kind of the overall state statistics also as a point of comparison. All right, our last tab here on the right is links. Maybe people forget about this, but actually there's a lot of good information in here. This gives you the description of, you know, how this survey and dashboard came to be. You know, obviously from the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority and the work that we do. There's links specific to Georgia. This includes our rates tables and report that we do every year. Obviously, GFA had a request for small systems to request technical assistance. The DCA, or the financial data, you can look that up here. And also, if you're interested in stormwater, we have a whole other stormwater dashboard. And of course, you can email me if you have some feedback or some questions. On the right here, we have additional tools and resources, and this applies, you know, basically to everyone. If you have a utility, these could be useful to you. Water and wastewater rates analysis model, looking into if you want to change your rates, different scenarios, different timelines, different raises, financial health checkup, really goes into a lot of different metrics on how you're doing today and in the future based on what your rates currently are. Plan to pay, about planning for capital improvement plans, super important. Residential rates affordability assessment, that's the one I mentioned earlier about looking at different income levels in your community. We also have a link to our environmental finance blog, which is updated every week, and we're really focused on water and wastewater utilities. So if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. You'll get a lot of useful information. And this rate approval strategy and toolkit for utilities. If they're thinking about, well, how can we approach this topic about the rate increase that we really need? All right. So we've gone through all of these kind of basic features of the dashboard, the dials, characteristics, links, and now we're going to take a live look at additional features that really make the interactivity of it great to use. Let me just pull up the dashboard. Here it is. Okay, so at the top, it is going to tell you what the rates are as effective by, which is important. If you're wondering, well, what if these rates got updated today? Those rates that were updated today are not in the dashboard. These are rates as of July 2018. And because we do this survey annually, we really have kind of the most up-to-date data available in most cases. So we do update these regularly with kind of some stragglers that come in, but pay attention to that because maybe some things have changed, but it's not going to be that old. All right, so at the top here we have some example utilities that you can use just to kind of give you an idea if you don't want to look at a specific utility. This one, low rates, low operating revenue. Obviously, those rates are low, their cost of recovery is terrible. They're really affordable. They're not promoting conservation. So that one bill amount can be looked at in 4 different ways right off the bat here. So let's say we are, who should we pick? Augusta. Let's go with Augusta here. Okay. So Augusta, water, 5,000 gallons, monthly water bill here, looks like they're right in the middle. And a new feature that we added last year is the average electricity bill. So, these are both services that you're probably going to need to pay for every month, though you do have some influence on how much they are based on how much you're using. So if you click on this question mark here, it's going to tell you where that data came from. So this is based on 1,098 kilowatt hours, and it's it's an average of both the summer and winter rates. So it's not an exact, bill amount that you might get, and the utility that it's associated with. So this is Georgia Power Companies, which, of course, they serve many, many people in the state, but it is specific to the utility. So we have mapped each utility to the energy provider that serves them. So just something to think about there. I mean, in this scenario, I'm saying water's looking pretty great. That's so cheap. You get so much for 1 month. 5,000 gallons of water, less than 30 bucks. Awesome. No diss on energy. Just, putting these together, you're getting more of an idea of the basic bills that someone in your community is having to pay. So we care about water and wastewater a lot, but you have to remember there are other things too. So electricity, just want to point that out. All right, so we have Augusta. We're seeing, based on comparing to all utilities, they're in the median, looking pretty good. Conservation signal, not so much, only $2.54. Might not scream out to customers that, they need to conserve water. Cost recovery, they are 1.08, so in that yellow section of they're able to, make ends meet, including depreciation, which is, a good place to be. Maybe they could go a little further if they so need to or so desire. And median affordability, we're on this lighter end of the spectrum here. So let's change it up and look at these different comparison groups. If one is gray, like this one says My Watershed, and it's grayed out, that means there aren't enough utilities in that comparison group to populate that data. So there's less than 10, so we don't use that. But let's say you're in the same water planning region. So it's giving you the information, Savannah, Upper, Okiki, oh, I hope I'm saying that right, sorry y'all, Okiki water planning region. It's telling you how many, 66 rate structures, and it's highlighting that whole area that's compared. So compared to, this water planning region, they're a little bit lower than where they were in the median. They were kind of more up here. And so these two have stayed basically, the same. They're still in the median. They're still not really promoting that much conservation. But this is where things can get interesting. I'm just going to switch it back to all utilities for a sec. This little bar beneath the map here is a basic way to look at how much your rates would need to be raised using your current rate structure to meet, whatever goal you're setting here. So let's say they're at 1.08. How much would it need to be raised to get them at maybe 1.15? And this goes all the way up to 150%, pretty extreme. Hopefully you don't need to raise your rates that much. Let me drop it down a little bit more. Okay, so if they wanted to get to, let's say, that 1.15 marker, they would have to raise rates 11%. Now, this is not, with 0.000, decimal places precision. This is an idea of the ballpark of what you would have to do. So if you look over here where the map has disappeared and it's been replaced with this kind of pinkish caution message, we have both a link to the water and wastewater rates analysis tool, which again is free, and it gives you different scenarios where you can really look in depth about how different rate changes or changes in rate structure would affect your utility financially. And we have the assumptions here. So we're assuming it's the same increase, 11% increase for everyone across the board, and it assumes a 3% drop in demand for every 10% increase in price. So that's based on economics, some economic models that are, have been known of for a long time. And let's say if you went all the way up to 150%, it's not going to be as accurate. Since this is on the lower end, it maybe gives you a good idea. It also shows you of where you started from. So this kind of lighter line on the left and where you would be if you raised it 11%. You can see, the increase there in the cost recovery. So it's showing you kind of the shadow of where you came from and then where you would be. Pretty neat. One more quick feature that I want to touch on is edit data or add utility. This is great if you are, one, not in the survey and you want to see, well, what would this look like right now if I was? Or you want to check out how you might change rates. So let's say we're Augusta. We can create a clone of Augusta. And this data is not going to be saved in our database. It's just on your computer, so you can play around with it. If you want to have it in our database, email me with your bill or your rate structure and everything. So for this, let's say we wanted to increase some bills. But you can also change, median household income and financials. Let's save that. And that's going to jump up there. So it's still showing you within, this all utilities survey group how things might change for you. But it's more of just like on a more basic level. If you really want to see how that looks, you can put it into the residential water and wastewater rates analysis tool. Okay, so those are a couple things that I hope you find useful in terms of interacting with the dashboard. And I think, let's go back to our presentation here. When to use the tool? Great question. So the dashboard is online, obviously, it's interactive, it's there. This tool is a great way to present to whoever you need to your board, to your customers, to the media, how your utility is doing. So as part of your annual rate review, which we hope you are, you're reviewing your rates annually and making sure that they still meet your priorities when you're presenting. So if let's say you're trying to raise rates, you can show people in a hopefully pretty easy to understand way, hey, we're in, the 10th percentile compared to our peers, and also we're, our cost recovery is in the red. So it's kind of just a very basic way. Maybe not everyone understands the intricacies of running a water wastewater utility. And if you're a private system, it can also be used in a PSC rate case. I know in various states that we've worked in, these actually are part of rate cases. There are screenshots of the dashboard and the documentation. So yeah, you can screenshot it, print it out, and I think we have some examples of how some utilities have done that in real life. So this top one with showing the cost recovery dial, this was part of this document that someone prepared, going into all these different metrics and showing how, things needed to change. They're showing like, hey, we're in the red right here. This is what that means. We need to raise our rates. So they're really laying it out in an easy to understand way. It's also not just based on some random idea. It is data. It is carefully cleaned and collected. So use us to back you up because we have done all the work. We have another example down here of an email that I received from a utility where they had been able, using our data, to get a rate increase, a 50% rate increase for water and sewer and 15% per year for the next 3 years. So that's awesome. And they also were able to do away with their decreasing block rate structure, which was not serving them and isn't used that much anyway. So those are just some examples of like, you can actually use this and it can help you out. Okay, I'm gonna pass it off to Austin. She's gonna go into some further resources. So here you go, Austin.
Hey everyone. So as Annalie mentioned, I'm going to be talking about some more resources that we have at the EFC, specifically about communicating your rates. So the first thing I want to talk about was some research that the EFC conducted a few years ago, which is basically just about effectively communicating your rates so that you can get the rate increases that you need. So basically the EFC at UNC and ICMA, which is a professional association of city and county managers and local government employees, conducted a survey of city county managers and chief elected officials. So this survey addressed both rate increases and communication. So communication includes the level of communication, the frequency of the communication, and the content between local government staff and governing boards, specifically about their water systems. So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about the results of that and some of the additional tools that we have to help you out with that. So here are just some general results from that survey. So specifically, the first thing that we wanted to cover was that from that survey, we found out that utilities are getting rate increases when they request them, but often those rate increases don't cover the full cost of recovery. 45% of respondents reported that they lowballed their rate increase. So they actually didn't go to their governing board and ask for the rate increase that they needed to meet that full cost recovery. And so a lot of the results of that suggest that the quality of the relationship mattered, and that was the reason that some of these respondents may have lowballed their rate increases. So what does that mean, the quality of their relationship? So basically what we learned is that utilities were more likely to request a full cost recovery when there was a better working relationship between these local government officers and the governing boards themselves. More specifically, the effectiveness and frequency of the communication really impacted that relationship. So not only did speaking more consistently with your governing boards help in covering the full cost of service, but also making sure that you're having effective communication. So you're not just talking to them about things that they're not interested in or aren't useful, but you're also making sure that it's targeted information that is necessary to make your case. So we also wanted to just show briefly some of the results of that survey. So here, basically what we have is a slide that shows the results of a question that asked about the information that was shared with people who were on the local governing body, and also how useful that information was. So you can see here, basically on the left, it's got the different possible responses. So how much the average bill would change with a rate increase, the financial condition of the water utility, how the changing circumstances might affect the finances, the anticipated capital expenses, and finally the physical condition of the water utility. So the first thing that we noticed whenever we looked at these results is that these first two categories here, that respondents, over 80% of respondents reported was shared and very useful, can actually be found on the rates dashboard. And in addition, some of these other categories, how changing circumstances affect finances and the anticipated capital expenses, can be found with our additional free tools. So the dashboard can really be a resource to folks who work at utilities in communicating some of these rate increases and making sure that they can have effective and frequent communication with their governing boards. So that was just kind of like a brief overview of some of the results of that survey. And as a result of that survey and a larger project, the EFC actually produced a rate approval strategy and toolkit that's available on the Georgia Water and Wastewater Rates dashboard, and also at this link that you see here. And actually, Annalee kind of pointed to it earlier, but we'll redirect you to it now, just in case it is something that's interesting to you to reach out and use as a resource. So to get to some of these additional resources, we just kind of wanted to walk you through the steps. So if you navigated to this link here, which basically takes you to a page that looks exactly like this. So on the left, you have a link that take me to the water and wastewater dashboard, and then on the right, you have take me to the stormwater dashboard. So as Annalee mentioned earlier, we also do a stormwater dashboard for Georgia. So if that's something that you're interested in, you could click on that. But for the purposes of this, we're just going to focus on the water and wastewater rates dashboard. So once you click on that link, you're basically given kind of 4 additional, easy things to click on that could potentially be resources for you. So the first would be just looking at the rates dashboard. We also have tables of rates and rate structures. We have your utilities rate sheet if you wanted to view that. And also we have summary reports for basically, like Annalee mentioned, we've been working with GFO since 2007 to produce these rates dashboards. So we have a lot of data between the tables and the summary reports. If you were interested in looking at trends and changes in either your utility or the whole cohort, we have that information available. So more specifically, again, on the rate approval strategy and toolkit, that's the link to it if you just wanted a direct link. And then I mentioned 2 blogs, or that basically the survey results that I was giving you was just kind of like a brief look. It actually came from 2 blogs that the EFC wrote that really take those results and concentrate them and kind of give you what is, the higher level, the most important stuff that might be helpful for moving forward with communicating your rate increase. So if you're interested in, reading these 2 blogs more specifically, we have the links here, but they're also listed on this webpage for the rate approval strategy and toolkit. So finally, just wanted to kind of take you back, circle back around to the links tab, because this is basically the home of all of these additional resources, and it's a really easy way to navigate from the dashboard to these resources immediately. So we have the link up here above, but again, if you were looking at the dashboard and you were on the rates comparison tab, you could just click on the links tab, and on the right, you have those additional tools and resources again. So, if you wanted to do a more in-depth look at your rates, you could use the rates analysis model. Again, all of these things that Annalee talked about previously, the financial health checkup, the plan to pay for capital improvement, if you wanted to look at affordability, or if you wanted to look at the blog more, more generally, not specific to those 2 posts that I mentioned. And then finally is the rate approval strategy and toolkit. So if you really just wanted to go straight from the dashboard to the rate approval strategy and toolkit, you could just click on that link right there and it'll take you directly to a lot of resources, a lot of information that can help you successfully and effectively communicate your rates. So the last thing that I wanted to mention was just an upcoming event. So I'll actually be going to the Georgia Rural Water Conference in Jekyll Island on May 7th through the 9th, and I'll be presenting on this dashboard. So if you knew someone who needed to see the dashboard, who was going to this conference, and you thought this might be a great way for them to go and ask questions, I'll be there. They don't have a specific agenda up yet, so I don't know exactly what time I'll be presenting, but I will be presenting on the Georgia dashboard there. It'll be similar content, but if a question arises, if you try using it between now and then and you have a question, you're going to be in attendance. This is a great way to interact in person with me about the dashboard and bring any questions or comments that you might have. So that brings us to basically the end of the content that we had for the webinar. If there were any questions, we can address those now. It looks like there is a question up here, so I think we can look into that. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. It says the dashboard is an excellent tool for our BOD, Polk County Water Authority. Must keep data input accurate and up to date to keep the dashboard robust. So Annalee, do you want to talk a little bit about how often perhaps the dashboard is updated?
Sure. So thank you for the comment. It's not really a question, I guess, but in terms of how often we update the dashboard, like I said, we do the survey every year. It sometimes varies of when we start the survey, could be in April, could be in July, but every year we are reaching out to your utility and asking have your rates changed in the past year? And if they have, if you can provide us with that new rates information. So I guess the most basic thing would be, first of all, please respond to the survey if you haven't in past years. We try to reach out to a couple different people at each utility in case, it's just someone is not checking their email or goes into whatever folder. So you can do that. And let's say maybe you didn't get an email. You can also just reach out to us and ask, like, hey, is this happening? We also tend to put a notice on the Georgia project page that says, like, the current survey is underway. The results will be available, whenever in spring 2019, for example. So responding, I would say, is the first step. The second step is once you have responded, we, enter all your rates into our database. We do all this cleaning and standardization, and then we reach back out to you guys to say, this is what we've interpreted your rates at. Please confirm that it's correct. So this is an opportunity in case we've made a mistake, in case we misinterpreted something on your rate sheet, or in case we have an old rate sheet for you to say, oh, those are last year's rates. Here are the new rates. Or, we forgot about the consumption allowance. It's not really written on there, but everybody knows about it. So that's another thing, like, respond to that check. That's another way to make sure we have up-to-date information. And the third way is if you have a rate change, maybe it's, in the middle of the year or not exactly when we are doing the survey, we will still accept that information. And we do updates to the dashboard about every quarter. We do it more frequently than that, but we make a point of every quarter, any, little updates or corrections that come in, those will all go out. So at the most, it's going to be 3 months, but it also could be like 2 weeks from now. So if that's something, any new information, just send it my way. You can email me or use those links that say, email for feedback or comments. And also, let's say you say, well, I can't wait another month to see this full, update on the dashboard. You can also use the edit data or add utility function that I showed you earlier in the upper right-hand corner to plug that new information in, and it'll still give you that information on the dashboard, even though it won't be saved to our database yet. You can still get kind of an instant look at, are we still within the median in our comparison group, that sort of thing. So I hope that's answered that question. But we are very committed to accuracy, to reaching out as many times. We keep a log, and sometimes we have emailed or called this utility 7 times. So we're trying to reach y'all. Please get back to us. But 97% of you have responded again. So most of you are doing pretty great, and we really appreciate that because it enhances the dashboard. It makes it better. The more people that participate, the more up-to-date the data is, the more useful it is for you as well. Also, we update the secondary data sources, so the census data and the CIDWIS data, on water source type and number of connections and that kind of thing. We update those as well regularly. So, we're just trying to be up to date all the time, I guess, in conclusion. So email me, respond to the survey, make sure your rates are correct. Also, those rate sheets for each utility are on our website. It was one of the buttons shown earlier. It says view your utilities rate sheet. You can pull that up anytime and see, are these up to date? Is this what it's supposed to be for, July 1st, 2018? So, I think that about covers it. We're relentless. This is all I do. This is my job, it's surveys. So very important to me. Do we have any other questions about the dashboard, the survey, anything else? I think so far we just had this one. If anyone has questions specific to their utility, you can, either email me or call me about that. Or if you're a small system serving 10,000 or fewer people, you can also request free direct assistance from us. And there's a link on the links tab of the dashboard, or you could just email me and I'll get that started for you. So that's another way. Let's say I'm not really sure how to do this full in-depth analysis using the free tool. We can have someone else do that for you and just show you, like, this is what happened. These are the recommendations. So that's another, great way to let us do the work for you. All right, unless there's any other questions, we're going to wrap up. Thank you all for sticking with us through, all the details of how all this works. We really appreciate your feedback. If you have another question later, just email me. If you have a specific, feedback on the dashboard, you say, oh, this part, confuses me, or can you add this feature? We do have a list of things that we're constantly adding new technical features and plans to update. So we do appreciate that feedback as well, because again, we want it to be as useful to you as possible. All right, well, I think that's about it. Austin, do you have any last words?
I don't think so. Yeah, just if you guys, if any questions that didn't come up now, come up later, we have our contact information here, so feel free to reach out to me, to reach out to Annalee, whatever's easiest for y'all. We definitely want to be a resource and help out in whatever way.
Also, this webinar is being recorded, so it will also be posted on our website. Let's say you have a colleague who wasn't able to attend. They can still watch this whenever on their lunch break in their free time and get all that information. So yeah, thank you all again for being with us here this morning, and I hope you enjoyed it. Let us know if you have any questions, and hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.